Assalamu alaikum. Dear students, in this lecture we are going to study about note taking and note making. So the lecture outline is, we are going to study in this lecture that what is note taking, benefits of note taking methods, then note making, that what is actually the note making, and the difference between note taking and note making. So let's begin. Note taking. What is note taking? It is simple, the act or process of taking notes. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines it as the act or process of taking notes. Note-taking is an essential learning skill for students to implement during the class time. The notes recorded during a class lecture should be compiled of the important facts or ideas presented by the professor. Note-taking is the practice of writing down or otherwise recording the key points of information. So basically what the note-taking is, in simple words, when we actually listen a lecture in a class or anywhere else, we are actually listening to some other person and we want to gain information from that person, we write notes. So in note taking means we are taking information from some other person. Some other person is actually giving us information, giving us a lecture, and we are actually taking the notes. So just take example of yours during class, you take the notes, like your teacher is actually giving you the lecture and you take notes, you write down what teacher teaches you. This process is actually termed as note taking. Like the teacher is delivering you the lecture and what you are taking from it, you are taking notes of it. Notes in the written form, you are taking notes of it. So this is actually the process, or we can say the term note taking is about this. So note taking is actually the act of writing down the points of the lecture explained by the teacher during the class. Like during the class, teacher gives you the information, teacher gives and you take. You are taking actually the information. So you are taking the information and at the same time you are writing down the information teacher gives, you take it and you are writing down. So it's basically termed as note taking. Note taking is when you simply write what you hear in lectures or from printed text. Like this may be note taking is actually, this may be in when you listen to someone else during the class lecture, or where some in a seminar you are actually listening someone, or from when you read a book. When you read a book, the author is actually has given the information there, and you take the information from there and you write it down. Like for example, if you study any book and you want to take the important points out of it, you just write it down somewhere else. So you are taking the notes from that printed text or printed material. So you actually write what you hear in lectures or in any seminar or in any place where you actually hear from someone that is delivering you the information, or you get the information from any printed material, printed text, or anywhere from the internet source, from anywhere which is actually given you the information, and you simply take that information and you write it down. This is termed as note taking. So this is actually the note taking process. So what are the benefits of note taking? There are several benefits of note taking. We have studied that what actually the note taking is. What is the process of note taking? So now we are going to study what are the benefits of note taking. Like, you take the notes for your ease, for your benefit. Like, if I deliver you the lecture in the class and you do not write or do not note anything, so after the lecture you may not remember what I delivered you. You may miss many points of information, but if you note it down, that may be easier for you to recall or to remember after the class. So the note-taking process is actually important. So what are the benefits? The first one, it keeps you alert. Note-taking keeps your body active and involved and helps you avoid feelings of drowsiness or distraction. Like when you in the class, just take the example of class, your teacher is delivering you the lecture and you are actually taking the notes, so it's keeping you alert, like it's keeping you active in the class. Otherwise, if you do not write anything, so you may distract from what teacher is actually saying, or you may feel like drowsiness in you, or you may not become active if you do not take the notes. But if you are taking the notes, you are actually listening to your teacher, you are actually involved in the lecture. So this keeps you, the first benefit is this keeps you alert. The second one is it engages your mind. Like, first one is it keeps you alert, it keeps you active. The second one is it engages your mind. Listening carefully and deciding what to include in notes keeps your mind actively involved with what you hear. Like when you are listening the lecture, it keeps your mind active, it engages your mind that you are hearing to the lecture and you are taking the notes, you are writing down that what to include and what not to include for your ease. So the next benefit is it emphasizes and organizes information. How? As you take notes, you will decide on and highlight the key ideas you hear, identifying the structure of a class presentation. You will also be able to indicate the supporting points of a presentation, making study and understanding easier after class. Such organized notes also make it easier for you to link classroom learning to textbook readings. Like when you take notes in the class, it actually organizes your information. That's this point we have studied, and in this way we have studied. Like you make points that this we have studied, we started from this, in the beginning we studied this, then this, then this. It actually organizes your information. And after the class, if your teacher or the lecturer to whom you people are listening, if it's actually from a textbook, you may link it to the textbook. Like, okay, the teacher has delivered this lecture from this textbook or from this particular website or from this particular material from handouts. So you may link up the teacher lecture or you and from to the handouts. So that will be easier for you to understand a particular textbook, a particular book, or we can say handout. So next one is creates a condensed record for study. So how it creates a condensed record for study? A set of concise, well-organized notes from each class session gives you what you need for study, learning, and review after class. Like, condensed means in a short form. It gives you a condensed record for your study. That a teacher gives you a lecture of, like, take an example, your lecture is of 3 hours. So what you study in the 3 hours in a lecture, that what you take the notes is actually a condensed record for your study. When you study after the class, you might have the record, okay, in this class we have studied this, and then in this class we have studied this. So it's a condensed record for your own study. Then note taking depends on active listening. Like if you do not listen actively in the class, you do not take proper notes, or you do not able to take the notes in a proper way. Then you must have to have the essential listening skills. How to develop the essential listening skills mean how to listen actively in class. I am going to explain you. Listening well is an active process which requires determination, energy, and attention. The following can help you listen thoroughly, accurately, and actively. So there are some steps which are going to make you able that how to listen actively in the classroom, which requires determination, energy, and complete attention. So the first one is overcome distractions. That in listening actively, active listening is actually essential for note taking, for effective note taking. And how to listen effectively? First is overcome distractions. No matter what the distractions may be, the noises, the worries, or people, you must take responsibility for concentrating on what a class provides. Like you do not have to consider the noises, the worries, or what people are actually talking around you. You just have to maintain your focus on what the lecturer or the teacher is actually teaching you. No one else can listen for you. Like no one else can listen for you. You are actually the ones who are going to take the information, so no one else can do this for you. Make a commitment to listen even when it is difficult and reduce any distractions for yourself. Like the students around you may be talking, you may engage with them in talking, or you have to make a commitment that no, I do not have to talk with someone else. I just only have to listen what the teacher or the instructor is actually teaching to me. So the next one is for active listening, focus on central themes. Like you have to focus on what the lecture is about, what your teachers actually is teaching you. Like in, for example, in today's lecture we are going to study about note taking, about the benefits of note taking, about the methods of note taking, and what is note making. So these are the central themes, the major ideas that I am going to talk in this lecture, particular lecture. So for hearing in a good way, you have to focus on central themes. Then use your extra speed of thought to make sense of what you are hearing. You have to be like in extra speed, like you have to be speedy in taking the notes. Like you have to be with the speed of the teacher, like in the way teacher is actually speedily explaining each and every point. So you have to use your extra speed of thought. Like you have to use your mind more actively with more extra speed. Then maintain your focus. You have to maintain your focus. How? When your mind wanders, refocus. Like when in a class, when teacher is actually delivering the lecture, you may have gone through with several distractions, like when someone comes to the class or the latecomers come to the class, you may look to them or you may engage with talking to them, or when someone asks you, for example, please give me a pen or a paper or something else, you may distract. But after that, you have to refocus yourself. When your mind wanders, refocus. Bring your attention back to what you hear. If you feel confused or lose interest, ask a question for clarification or leave a question mark in your notes. Like when you feel confused, or like when you do not getting the lecture, or you are actually losing the interest from the lecture, ask a question for your clarification. Ask questions from teacher. or you can leave a question mark in your notes that this is the place or this is the point where I was confused, where I do not understand what I am actually taking the notes. So for after the class or later or at the end of the lecture, you may ask from your teacher. You can discuss the point later with your instructor or another student. Always keep up with your note taking so that your record of each class will be complete, like first lecture, second lecture, third lecture, fourth lecture, fifth lecture. So for example, if you have people have 5 lectures and you have the record in the written form of all the 5 lectures, later after the class you might have the record, okay, in the first lecture you have taken the notes, we have studied this, in second we have studied this, in third we have studied this. So you have the record of these lectures. The last one is judge the message, not the messenger. Not all instructors are excellent presenters, but the information that they are presenting is still valuable. Focus on what you are hearing, not how it is being presented. Determine to learn from every class presentation. Judge the message, not the messenger. So you are actually supposed to focus on the content, on the message of the lecture or the information. Like most of the time, the teachers are not a good presenter. They have with them the very good information, but they do not deliver it in an effective way. So do not focus on the messenger. Focus on the message, that what message the instructor is actually delivering. So we have studied about what is note taking and benefits of note taking, and note taking involves active listening, and how we listen actively we have studied the points. So now there are common note taking methods. That what are the methods that are effective while taking the notes? So we have in general 5 methods: the Cornell method, the outlining method, the mapping method, the charting method, and the sentence method. So let's discuss these methods one by one. The Cornell method. What it is? This method provides a systematic format for condensing and organizing notes. In this method, the students have to make 3 sections on a paper, like you take notes on some paper, on some register, on some notebook, and that register notebook has papers. So you have in Cornell method how to take notes. You have to make 3 sections on the paper. The one section is for keywords, the second section is for explanation, and the third section is for the summary. Third sections on a paper, one for keywords, second for explanation, and the third one is for the summary. This method is effective because the main points, details, study cues, and summary are all written in one place. In one page, what you have written, the main points, the details, the summary, at one place. So that would be easier for you after the lecture, after the class, when you study the notes, when you study your notes. So let's take the view that how the Cornell method is actually we made. This is actually the simple, that we have a paper. The upper section is for the title section, that what your instructor teaches you or what you are going to learn. Like for example, in today's lecture I am teaching you about note taking and note making. So you may have a paper and you may write down a title, note making and note taking. So in the left we have a section for the keywords, then in the right we have the section for the details, and at the bottom of the paper we have to leave some lines for the summary. like these are actually the keywords. This is actually the explanation of the lecture, and at the end you have to write the summary that this we have studied this and this. So this is again the visual view of the Cornell method note taking. Then in this section, in the right one section, you have to take the notes. This is colored. Then in the left, you have to write the keywords or the comments, whatever you have in your mind. And then in the bottom, you have to write the summary of the lecture. So this is actually the Cornell method of taking the notes, that you can take the notes in this way. Another example, title, keywords, or questions or cues what you have, then your main notes, what you have actually want to write or want to take, the notes, your thoughts. Then in the bottom you have a summary of your lecture for your ease. This is actually basically the Cornell method, that using the Cornell method you take the notes in this way. Then we have the outlining method. What it is, in this method the information or the lecture is written in the outline form. Like in this method, the students or the one who is actually taking the notes writes the information or the lecture in the outline form. Like we have many written material when we write in the outline forms. How? Let's take an example. See this. This is actually, we have the example. The title is Body Language and Oral Presentations. So the student has made the outlines, has taken the notes in the form of outlines. That what is first outline? Body language. Then under the body language heading there is a subheading, movement. Then under the movement there are subheadings. Then facial expressions. Then under the gestures there are subheadings. Then the student has made the outlines, that okay, this outline, this body language contains movement for the what contains 1 2 3 4 points. Then facial expressions contains what, then the outline gestures contain what points, then the posture contain what points. So if you are taking the notes in by using the outlining method, so you have to take the notes in this form. We have studied the Cornell method, the outlining method. In the Cornell method, we take the notes by making the 3 sections on the paper, and in the outlining method, we take the notes by making the outlines of the content of the lecture. So let's move towards the third method. The third method is actually the mapping method. So by mapping, you are getting the idea that there is something about the maps. So mapping is a graphic representation of the information being presented that uses comprehension or concentration skills and relates each factor or idea to the others. Mind maps provide a great overview of a topic because they store all your notes related to that topic on one single page. Like you made a map of all the relevant details what the teacher teaches you by drawing a map. How you draw a map? Let's look at the example. This is actually how you draw a map during a lecture while taking the notes using the mapping method. You actually supposed to make a map on your page and add the relevant information according to that map. Like we have the US history, okay, US history, then to migration to America, colonial era, then one migration to America, Native Americans, and when, then colonial era, Spanish, Columbus, then other details are in the map form. Let's take another example. So the title of the topic is green energy. So the student has made the map, 5 types, which types? Solar, biomass, geothermal, hydroelectric, and wind. So the solar What is solar? That is a type of energy that is obtained from sunlight, biomass obtained from etc., geothermal, hydroelectric, and wind. So this is the way how the student has made a map of the details of the lecture. So after the lecture, it may be easier for you to understand that how the things are actually related to each other and how the details are in the form of map. So we have studied the Cornell method, the mapping method, the outlining method, and I have given you the relevant examples that if you are going to take the notes using these methods, so how you are going to take the notes. The fourth one is the charting method. The word chart here shows you that something is going to be in a chart form. In this method, the students write the information in the form of charts. If the lecture or reading has a clear outline, you can create a chart based on the categories of information that will be covered. Like in this method, the students made charts of information. Like the teacher is delivering you the lecture and you are taking the notes, you are taking the information and writing it down, noting it down in the form of charts. So you are using the charting method for note taking. So how you use the charting method? Let's take an example. This is the example that how you made charts while taking the notes using the charting method. The dates, the war, countries, the topic may be of world wars. So dates, which type of war, countries involved, then the leaders, then other details. So you made chart of that things. Another example, so you have to write the title and you have to make the chart like how advantages, disadvantages, when to use it. So this is actually the way you make charts while using the charting method for taking the notes. Now the last one is the sentence method. The sentence method, by the sentence you are getting the idea that this is actually when you simply take the notes in writing down the sentences, one after the one information, okay, full stop, second information, okay, full stop, then you have third information, okay, you write a sentence, then full stop. The sentence note taking method is simply writing down each topic as a jot note sentence. This method works well for fast-paced lessons where a lot of information is being covered, where your instructor is continuously giving you a lot of information, a great number of information, and you simply keep writing down that information in the form of sentences. So this is actually the sentence method of taking the notes. How? Let's look at this format. Sentence 1, sentence 2, sentence 3. In this way you take the details of that topic. So now we have studied about what is note taking and the benefits of note taking, and what are the methods used by the students or anyone else who wants to take the notes. So there are basically 5 methods. So now what is note making? Note making is a process of writing down important points, arguments, facts, or ideas from a written material. Note making follows on from taking notes and happens when you review your notes and reorganize them in a way that makes more sense or leads to more obvious connections between points. Note making then is when you have to actively select, organize, and connect data and information that is particularly relevant and important to a deeper understanding of the subjects. So now, in easier words, what the note making actually is. The note making is actually a process that starts after note taking. In note taking, you take the lecture, you take the information during the class, or when you are actually listening to someone, you take the notes on your register on your notebook wherever you want to take the notes. And then after the class, when you read your notes, you have taken the notes, then you read your notes, and then you reorganizes or assembles that information which is in the note taking for your ease, for your record. That is actually the note making. You take the material from the written material, and then you arrange it, review your notes, and you reorganizes them. That makes more sense for you to understand. So this is actually the note making. Note taking is when you take notes from someone who is actually delivering the information. Note making is when you make the notes from your material, from your taken note material. So now what is actually the difference between note taking and note making? Note taking is a passive process which is done at lectures, whereas note making is more active and focused activity where you assimilate all information and make sense of it for yourself. Now, note taking is a passive process, whereas note making is an active process. Do not make yourself confused in passive and active. Note taking is a passive process in a sense that you do not do anything by yourself. You just have to write down what your instructor is actually saying. But your listening activity is active. But the process is passive in a sense that you are actually not doing anything. You are just taking the information from the instructor. Whereas note making is an active process. How? Because you are the only one to make your notes. You are taking the information by yourself from the notes which you have taken from your teacher. So note taking is fast, uses the original author's language, and generally feels easier. The issue is the content is often poorly assimilated and easily forgotten. In contrast, note making is slower, more involved, and uses our own language. As a result, the content is easier to understand and remember. Like in note taking, we just actually take the notes from what teacher or the instructor is saying. We just write it down. That may not be easier for after the lecture to understand, and for your ease, you make the notes to understand what the teacher in note taking is a faster process. You may write many things in abbreviated form, whereas in note making process you write each and everything in the detail in your own language, that okay, we have studied this, and I have to make the notes for this particular purpose in this way. So this is all about note taking and note making. So these are the references. You can take guide from these references as well. Thank you.